Today, we want to bring you through what is our most popular workshop and one that Amanda was very excited about called, as you can see, Embracing Failure. And while we primarily focus on leaders, you're going to see that I have, for the purpose of today's presentation, scratched out the word leaders and wrote everyone's. Embracing failure is the secret not to just a leader's success, but to everyone's success. And it is my hope that by the end of our time together today, you feel more empowered to, yes, fail, and even more so to encourage and support others who have, so that we can facilitate a culture of growth instead of what we will discover is the opposite at the beginning of our presentation. So, who is excited to get started this morning? We need more coffee. Yeah. All right. Say, let's get it if you're ready to get started. Let's get it. All right, very good. Our first question today, what has been your biggest failure in 2025? Don't worry, you don't have to answer me, but reflect. What has been your biggest failure? And as you ponder what your biggest failure has been, I want to ask a subsequent question. Why is that question so difficult for us? Some of you might be like, oh my goodness, which one was the biggest? There's been a lot. But I think the average of us has a problem with this for one of two reasons. One, either we haven't failed. I don't think that's possible. Or as human beings, we are naturally adverse to admitting failure. In fact, I feel like if I had pointed to any one of you and said, what's your biggest failure in 2025? You bravely would have piped up and said something super insignificant like, I forgot to get eggs when I went to the grocery store. Not because you genuinely thought that is your biggest failure, but because as human beings, we have this defense mechanism that goes up that says, I'm not putting my trash out there. Who do you think you are calling me to the carpet? And so as we engage this topic today, I really hope that we can, I'll say understand that it's okay to fail and that we don't have to be afraid of admitting it. In fact, I would say that the very first thing I want us to all recognize is that failure is part of life. Failure is a part of life. Whether you are running a business or you are just looking at your personal life, it can be very, very easy to kind of look out at the world and think, man, everybody but me has it together. Everybody's got it figured out, and I'm over here struggling. And I just want to tell you, don't buy the hype. Social media, complete facade. All right, no one's telling the truth on social media. When's the last time you put your junk on social media? Same thing is true for everybody else. Books that are written. I love reading these self-help or improvement books because half of the authors, I know them, and I'm like, okay, this sounds beautiful. This sounds like you have no issues, that you got it all figured out, that it's perfect. But I know the backstory, and it is not what you wrote. And then even those of us that get up in front and speak, and we get up here and we give our little presentations, and we're rarely vulnerable. We're rarely authentic. We act like we truly have all the answers. And I'm just being very real with you. We don't. Just as much as you don't, we don't. And failure is a part of life. And I really believe that most people are working harder to try to cover up their failures than they would if they were just willing to embrace them and learn from them. We spend so much time and energy and effort trying to pretend like we have nothing wrong. Like everything is beautiful, everything is perfect, everything is put together, we have no issues. And then we get really discouraged because it feels like everybody else has it because that's what they're doing too. And the reality is we're very much all in the same boat. When we try to hide our failures though, it has massive consequences. I like to call it exponential impact. We all know what an exponent is, right? We know an exponent, the little number above the other number, right? And so if I have 4 to the 4th power, it's not like 4 times 4, that's only 16, right? It's 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. And when we try to hide our failures, they have exponential impact. And I think of a couple of examples that I want to share with you today about the exponential impact when we try to hide, or at least we don't acknowledge and admit our failures. The first one is when we don't admit our failures. Now, how many of you drive a Tesla? Anybody here drive a Tesla? No one. It's like one of the first times I've had that where no one. All right, how many of you have seen a Tesla? All right, very good. How many of you like the new Tesla Cybertruck? No one. All right. I just like doing these polls just for kicks and giggles. All right. Anyone want to say that was a failure? No. How many of you knew or know that Tesla, specifically in early 2020, had a dynamic competitor in the alt fuel space called Nikola? Has anybody heard of the Nikola car company? All right, a couple of you have. Those of you that knew of Nikola, do you know what their alt fuel was? Hydrogen, very good. So for those of you that are science nerds, yes, Nikola Tesla was a person, that's an individual, but they split their names and turned into two companies, and you had Nikola and you had Tesla. Tesla's alt fuels vehicle was obviously electric. We see them running around all over the place. They had a very fierce competitor in the early 2020s called Nikola. Nikola was providing a hydrogen option, primarily in the trucking aspect of things, and when Tesla rolled out their first prototype, Nikola went, oh, crud. We need to do something quick or we're going to get left in the dust. And so if you had invested in Nikola's stock in, I think it was January of 2019, Nikola's stock, you would have paid just about $300 a share for Nikola's stock, all right? In January 3rd, which is the beginning of the fiscal year, or the beginning of the calendar year, you would have paid $291.75 for one share of Nikola stock. But when Tesla rolled out their vehicle, Nikola went, oh my goodness, we need to move quickly. And so they sent out and they broadcast a video of their prototype. And the minute they rolled out the video of their prototype, their stock shot up. And if you would have bought their stock in about middle of 2020, you wouldn't have paid $300 or $400 or $500 or $1,500. You would have paid $1,977 per share of Nikola. Here's the problem. Nikola had failed and refused to admit it. As it turned out, the video that they sent out of their prototype was nothing more than their truck rolling down a hill with the camera at an angle. They didn't admit their failure. It was discovered via whistleblower. And would anybody like to guess how much you can buy one share of Nikola stock for today? It is still in existence. The company still exists. They're in Tempe, Arizona. Anybody want to guess? $1, $5, okay. $2? What'd you get? 50 cents. So when the very first time I ever did this presentation, which was probably about 18 months ago, give or take, the cost of it was $10, $10.50, all right? Over the course of the past 18 months, their slide, much like the hill their truck rolled down, has continued to go down. And if you wanted to buy a share of stock, the last time I updated this, which was last week, you could have purchased one share of Nikola's stock, not for $291, not for $1,977, not even for 50 cents, but for a mere 11 pennies. Now, here's what's interesting about this. Car manufacturers fail all the time. How many of you have had a vehicle that got recalled? Oh, yeah. That's a failure. But that's an acknowledged failure. That's an admitted failure. In fact, we talked about the Cybertruck a minute ago. It was like 2 weeks after the Cybertruck rolled off the line, they had to recall every single one of them. And their stock took a hit because of it, but guess where it's at today? Higher than it was then. Why? Because they admitted the failure. They came out and said, hey guys, we screwed up, bring us the trucks back, we'll fix them, and we'll take care of it for you. Now, it's always easy to point to other people and say, wow, I can't believe they were so stupid. Like, did they not realize that that fake video was going to get released at some point? It's a little bit harder to make it personal and to be vulnerable. And I'm going to ask you to be vulnerable with yourselves today. And in order to do that, I'm going to start by being vulnerable with you. Can I be vulnerable? Is that okay? Can I be authentic and vulnerable with everybody here today? Everyone's agreeable? Okay. Before I do that, let me ask you, how many of you were 19 once? How many of you remember being 19? I see some gray hair in the room. I'm just curious. Here's the better question. How many of you did really stupid stuff when you were a teenager? Heck yeah. Yeah, me too. In fact, for me, I'm going to put myself in a category, not of not admitting failure. I'm going to say I didn't acknowledge my failure. See, I had some issues going on in life, and those issues, I made a really, really dumb decision when I was 19 years old. Myself and 3 of my friends had the very incredibly stupid idea of lighting a fire. And my best friend, who lit that match, did not make it out of that fire alive. Now, obviously, lighting a fire is a crime. And when somebody dies, it gets a whole lot more serious. And for me, that resulted in a significant time in prison. Because there are consequences when we fail. As I went through that experience, I recognized that it wasn't that I didn't admit failure. I got caught pretty quick. What it was I wasn't acknowledging failure. I had character flaws in my life that I did not acknowledge. And because I didn't acknowledge the character flaws in my own life, a lack of courage, a lack of integrity, a lack of just good moral character for that matter, it had exponential impact. And here's what stinks about this. Our exponential impact when we don't admit our failures, when we're not willing to own our flaws, is that it impacts not just us, it impacts everybody around us. Now, I can speak for a long time about the impact of my poor choices, and I'm happy to answer any questions after this. I don't want to make the presentation about me, but I wanted to start by being very vulnerable with you and share, I know what it means to fail significantly. I know what it means to have to face the 5 o'clock news. I know what it means to have to learn from that failure, and as we go through our presentation today, I know what it means to redeem that failure by being willing to not only grow personally, but help other people in their growth. And so as we look at this, I want to just offer 3 thoughts about when we don't admit our failure. The first thing is that when we choose to hide our failure, the first thing we do is we prioritize ego over growth. I made a statement earlier, just a few minutes ago, when I said that we work harder trying to pretend like we're not failing than we do actually dealing with our failures. When we are more interested in how we look than who we are prioritizing ego over growth. We're saying it matters more to me what people think of me than who I actually am. And that was me for a lot of years. And here's what happens. In that scenario, as we prioritize ego over growth, we put ourselves on this pedestal. And we put ourselves in this look at me category that quite frankly is not sustainable. How many of you have ever seen someone knocked off their pedestal? How many of you have ever been knocked off your pedestal? Are you willing to raise your hand if you've been knocked off your own pedestal? Awesome, a couple of you. Thank you for being honest with us. It hurts. But most of all, we create a culture of perfection. And a culture of perfection is not attainable. Now, I want to, for those of you that are business owners, for those of you that are running a team or a leader of some way, I want to distinguish something here. I am not saying that a culture of excellence is not attainable. There's a huge difference between a culture of excellence and a culture of perfection. And that's a whole separate presentation, but culture of excellence, absolutely. That's something we should strive for. That's something we should fight for. That's something that we should work to empower in our teams. But a culture of perfection, anybody here perfect? I remember I used to coach softball, and it was so fascinating to me how the same player who could misjudge a ball in the outfield, trace it back, and just land it behind me, would be furious with the umpire that missed a call. Wait a minute, did you not just miss where the ball was like 30 seconds ago? Is it so hard to believe that that umpire is also human? So a culture of perfection is not attainable. And I think that sometimes as leaders, we think that we're setting this good example because we put on this brave facade and we're like, no, look at me. You can use me as an example. And we think we're helping our team, but what we're actually doing is we're setting both ourselves and our team up for failure because we're creating this image or this environment that's completely unattainable. And we'll get to this more in just a minute, but has anybody worked in a kind of a perfection culture in the past? Yeah? What does that turn into? I know this is kind of a long shot question, so if you get this right, that's great, but if you don't, I just want us to think through what happens in a culture of perfection. There's only one real result that ends up coming from that. It's toxic. You're absolutely correct. There's a specific thing that makes it very toxic, and I like to call it the CYA culture. Everyone here know what CYA is? CYA, pardon my language, cover your ass. It turns into a culture where no one is open about anything and everyone is most concerned about making sure that I've got my butt covered. Because why? Because we're not perfect. But if it's a culture of perfection, I've got to do whatever it takes. I've got to hide, I got to lie, I got to steal, I got to cheat, I got to manipulate, I've got to do whatever I've got to do to make sure that no one can point the finger at me. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. But for now, I want to say that I have come to a place in my life, and I'm going to bet this is going to resonate with some of you as well, that frankly, I don't even trust people who haven't failed. Why? Well, two reasons. Number one, I don't think that that's possible, right? So if you haven't failed and if you tell me you haven't failed ever, now I already know you're a liar, and so now I can't trust you. So, sorry. But let's just assume, for the sake of a conversation, let's just assume like you're sitting here today and you're like, no, like I know this person and I know everything about their life, and like they haven't. Like it's just been great. And in the scenario that is genuinely true, highly sus, but genuinely true, I call those individuals knights in shining armor. It might seem like a weird thing to call them. Why would I call them knights in shining armor? I call them knights in shining armor because the knight that is in shining armor has just been posted up. They haven't achieved. They haven't gone to battle. They haven't conquered. They haven't been victorious. They posted. They haven't experienced anything. And I don't know about you guys, but when I engage with somebody and I'm looking for somebody to work with, work for me, I want somebody that has experience, somebody that's gone through some things, someone that knows how to navigate life. And people that have not, unfortunately, crumble at the first sign of adversity. So I call it knight in shining armor because the knight that had the shining armor was the one that didn't go through anything. The knight that had conquered, that had gone out and was victorious, their armor was not shiny. It was dinged, it was dented, it was bloody, it was muddy, it was gross. Because they'd gone forth, they'd conquered, they'd done something, they had been victorious, they'd been courageous, and they were trustworthy. They were dependable. Their character had been proven. And that is why I suggest that trusting people who have not failed is kind of an exercise in futility. Now, I think you probably already understand this, but in order to avoid everything we've talked about up to this point, what's the first thing you have to do? Fail. I like that. Fail is first. Okay. The second thing you have to do after you fail. No, that's good. That's good. I've never had anybody say that. That was amazing. Recognize your failure. The first step is to own your failure. You have to own your failure. Ownership is power. As long as we're not willing to own both our choices and their consequences, we're a victim to our circumstances, and victims have no power. But the minute we can say, look, I did that, it was not right. I did it, I was wrong, I failed, I accept responsibility, and I accept the consequences, all of a sudden, I have power to do two things. Number one, I have power over the situation, and number two, I have power to redeem that situation. And again, this is true in life, and this is true in business. You have a horrible, horrible month sales-wise. You have a terrible month manufacturing-wise. If no one's going to own it, we can't learn from it. We can't grow from it. We can't do anything about it. But the minute someone says, nope, that was on me, I know what I've done wrong, and we're going to make an adjustment, we have power to actually move forward with our life. And I think this is so important that I actually today want to give you something that's going to help empower us all to do this. Because I think that what happens is we have a default. And this is not a you, this is not a, how terrible of you. This is something that as human beings, it's a defense mechanism we have. And this is what happens. When we fail, not if, but when we fail, our brain leads us into a trap. And this is the trap that we all, and you don't have to raise your hand if this resonates, but I want you to think about this and just say, have I ever done that? And if you're honest, I think you're going to say yes. Something happens, it goes wrong, and the first thing that we think is, how do I cover that up? How do I make that look like that never happened? Maybe it's as simple, and this goes all the way back to grade school. What's the first thing we did when we messed up on our letters and numbers? Erased them. It's the first thing we did. We erased them. And so it goes all the way back. So I want to help us rewire our brain. Can I get two volunteers, actually? Can I get two volunteers that's willing to pass something out for me? Right here. Excellent. We've got, where's the other? My box is right here. Okay. Can I ask you to pass those out to everybody? And then, perfect, if I can ask you to pass anybody that needs a pencil. So if you already have a pen with you, you don't need a pencil. If you don't have a pen with you, then I've got a pencil for you. And just to talk about the difference between perfection and excellence, you're going to find these pencils. I believe in excellence, but not perfection. Didn't give you a pen, but there's little pencils. When's the last time you saw a golf pencil with an eraser on it? Excellence. We want to have excellence. We're not giving the cheap, chintzy, whatever. Like, we want excellence, but we don't expect perfection. All right? 2 rules as we fill out these pages. In just a minute, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to give you a chance to do this. 2 rules. Rule number 1, please be honest with yourself. This is not for me. You don't need to give these back to me. You don't need to give these to anybody here. This is for you and you alone. So please be honest with yourself, because if you can't be honest with yourself, what are you even doing here? The second thing is, you don't need to be looking at anybody else's page. That's for themselves. Please stay focused on your journey. Answer the questions as it appears on the page. You'll see them on there. My name is, you can put in your name. I failed when, you can put in your failure. Unfortunately, I had these consequences. You can put those in, but not all was lost. Here's what I learned from it, and now I see how it helped me in the following areas. I'm going to stop talking for about 7 minutes, and I'm going to let you engage that piece of paper and work through something that maybe you've gone through in your life. Thank you both for being open about your failures. And thank you to each of you who wrote something on your page. It really is a personal journey. There are a few benefits to owning our failure. I'm going to touch on 2 kind of broad spectrum benefits to owning our failure. The first one is going to be for everyone in this room, because everyone in this room, let me make sure, everyone in this room writes something on their page? Yes, everyone wrote something? Okay, cool. So if you've written something on your page, the value of that is personal growth. Personal growth. You get 3 things in this personal growth category. When we're willing to own our failures, when we're willing to admit them, first of all, we get a benefit of perspective. I mentioned a minute ago that from a very young age, we have a hardwired mechanism that says, oops, let me cover it up, let me pretend like this never happened, and let me move forward as though it didn't. And what I've asked us all to do here today is I've asked us to adopt a new perspective, and we've begun a process of re-hardwiring the brain to say, oops, I messed up. Here's the consequences. I'm going to acknowledge that. Here's the lesson. I'm going to grow from that. And here's a positive impact as I move forward with this. It's a whole new way of wiring the brain. So you're going to gain a different perspective. Because of that, the second benefit in the personal growth category is you get to actually grow. You don't have to keep making that mistake. If we own it and we think about it from this perspective, okay, what am I going to do differently? I would think, and I'm going to pick on TNS Brass because they're such an awesome place. I would imagine if a part is being manufactured incorrectly, the last thing that they want in their QA department is for that to get covered up and pretended like it never happened. I would imagine what they'd like is to make sure it gets fixed so that they're putting out the best parts. The same thing can be true of us. And then the last thing, and this specifically applies to those of you that were willing to share today, or all of you who are willing to share with someone. In this personal growth journey of owning our failure, when we're willing to share it with others, we gain a huge added benefit I call accountability. Here's the beautiful thing, and I'm going to pick on you a little bit on this one because yours is more what you're going through kind of right now, it sounds like, in your journey. And so because you were willing to be vulnerable and step up here and say, guys, I screwed up, and here's what I learned, you've invited the whole room into your journey, and now they get to come to you and say, hey, I thought you were going to be offering some workshops. I thought you were going to be partnering with someone. Have you done anything with that yet? I'm excited for you, and I want to see you succeed. And you would never have gotten that if not being willing to share with others that are now invited to participate in the journey. So those are the 3 personal goals, or the 3 personal growth aspects. But then there's an additional aspect, and that is you get to better serve others. How many of you resonated with one of the 2 stories shared here today? About half the room. And I bet you if we'd added 1 or 2 more, the whole room would have their hands up. Maybe if I add my story, maybe you know somebody or that resonated if you add my story to that question. You get to serve others when we're willing to share our own challenges, our own failures, our own growth journey. We get to help other people, and maybe they don't have to fail like we did. How many of you have learned a lesson because of somebody else's failure? That would have been impossible if you didn't know about it. It would have been impossible if they hadn't shared it. There's been a lot of things that I've learned from people about what not to do. I've had some great mentors, some things I've been able to learn to do, but I've learned a lot about what not to do. And when we're willing to share as people that are authentic and real and recognizing, I'm a human being and I'm gonna fail, it allows us to be compassionate to others. It allows us to empower them on their growth journey, and it allows us to encourage them. Do you know how many people I've had the opportunity to encourage because of what I've gone through, and to say either to people that are in that situation, look, you can make better choices and move on in life. I go into prisons in South Carolina now and go in and talk to the inmates and tell them they are defined by their choices. Not by a choice, but by their perpetual choices. The choices they make today and tomorrow and the next day are going to determine their character and their destiny. I wouldn't have that opportunity if I wasn't willing to talk about it. I've also had the opportunity to encourage a lot of parents whose kids are on a path that they're really concerned about, and to recognize, hey, God's grace is not too far from anyone. And that's been a huge blessing in my life, to be able to help and encourage people, but I have to be open and transparent. I can't hide it. A lot of people try to hide things like this, and I could, but Google will reveal it anyway, so I try, right? This next slide is specifically designed for those of you that are leading a team. Applies to all of us, but it's specifically designed for those of you that are leading a team. People who fail create a culture of growth. I made a comment earlier. I said we were going to come back to it. I haven't forgotten about it. We said that when we have a culture of perfection, it turns into what? Toxic and CYA. CYA is the opposite of a growth culture. How many of you have worked in a CYA culture? Yeah, we probably all have. I know I have, and I want to tell you a little story about a scenario where I worked in a CYA culture for quite some time. The company had been around about 12 years when I got to be a part of it, and I came in, I had some previous knowledge of what was going on with the organization, and I came in determined to help change the culture. And there was a lot of things I was able to do that worked really well, but there are difficult things. But I remember I had been with the company now for about 2 years. I had been promoted. I was now director overseeing 4 countries, 5 teams, about 24 people, and a Norma, her name was Norma. Norma calls me, and Norma, I'm director, so I answer directly to the CEO. I'm director. Under me, there's going to be the managers, and there's going to be the supervisors, and there's going to be the team leads. So she's about 3 or 4 levels below me, hierarchically. Knew way more than I did, so, I'm going to pretend like I was above her, just chain of command. But she calls me, she says, hey, John, I'm trying to quote this customer, and I got 2 different price sheets, and they both kind of apply to this situation, but they're not matching on our tracking. On one sheet, the tracking is included. On the other sheet, the tracking costs an extra $100. I said, let me take a look. Now, all the price sheets were specifically done, even though I was the director of revenue, everything that was on the price sheets was done by the CEO. And so this is a CEO question. The CEO is on a rare vacation. I'm not bothering the CEO. And so I say to her, well, Norma, I'm looking at this. I don't understand why we're charging $100 on this other sheet. So let's go ahead and give it to the client. And if I'm wrong, I'll pay the difference. And then I say the words that everyone in a CYA culture wants to hear. I'll take responsibility and I'll send you an email so you have this in writing. And I did. So I sent Norma this email and I copied the CEO and I said, hey, Norma, per our conversation, I'm authorizing you to give this to the client at $0, blah, blah, blah. I'm CCing the CEO. If this is wrong, we'll correct it. Guess who made the wrong call? CEO responds, no, that's not correct. Those price sheets are distinct for a reason, and here's why. So I responded back and I said, my apologies. I take full responsibility. If I need to pay for the cost of the tracking, I will take care of that. And words that had never, in my experience, come out of that CEO's mouth came out, no, that's not necessary. As long as we learn from it, that's all that matters. Awesome. But I wasn't done. I called Norma back and I said, hey, Norma, I need you to do me a favor. She said, what's that, John? I said, I need you to put in a QC code on me. Now, for those of you that are in kind of the manufacturing world or any world that has safety and compliance measures, QC codes are the enemy. Because a QC code, a quality control code, is a way on the record that you are responsible for something that went wrong. And especially in a CYA culture, nobody wants a QC code put in on them. And here I am telling somebody that is 4 levels below me to enter a QC code in the system on their director. She goes, what? Why? We've already taken care of it. We don't need to put that on. I said, Norma, here's the deal. You know about this. I now understand it better. But how's the rest of the company going to learn unless we put it on the QC report so it can be brought up at the QA meeting and all the other department heads can learn about it too? Took me 3 calls to get her to actually file that QC report. When we admit our failures, when we own them, we give the opportunity for growth. We have the opportunity to let everybody grow with us. And when we do that, we can coach. We don't need to criticize. We don't need to complain. We don't need to condemn people. But when they fail, we can coach them through it. Because we've created this culture that says, did you mess up? Good, I want to know about it. Not so I can yell at you, so that we can find a better way. So that we can learn from it together. So that as an organization, we can get better. And I would encourage those of you that are leaders for two things to watch out for as you're coaching people through this. First of all, look for failures in the process, not the person. Oftentimes we're looking at the person and saying, what did you do wrong? When most of the time it's a process issue. Using my example, I'll take ownership. I made the call, but ultimately we had conflicting SOPs and conflicting price sheets. That's what ultimately needed to be addressed so that anyone else could look at that and they didn't need to be at that QA meeting. They would be able to see easily what was wrong. The second thing is don't fall into the trap of using 20/20 hindsight as the measure of success. I've seen way too many organizations, including ones I've been a part of, where if it worked, great, you're a genius, thank you so much for thinking outside the box. And if it didn't work, you idiot, how dare you deviate from the SOP? Don't do that to your people. Have high expectations on excellence, thinking through why did you make that decision, what would give you that line of thought, but low expectations for the outcome with the understanding that, again, we're human and that hopefully they are moving forward in the way that they genuinely believe is the best for the company. And if they're not, that's a whole separate issue. That's a remediation question, which is a whole separate presentation. But those conversations have to happen. But we're looking for the issue in the process, not the person, and we're not using 20/20 as our expectation. Now, I've said for most of our time together today that we have to own our failure, we have to admit our failure is a part of life, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. But now I'm going to flip the script on you and I'm going to say that failure is a paradox. What's a paradox? Who can tell me what a paradox is? I know y'all know. A contradiction. Two things that seem like they're opposed that are both true at the exact same time. I submit to you this morning for your consideration that there is no such thing as failure as long as there's growth. There's no such thing as failure as long as there's growth. The first story I'll tell you is one that I'm guessing everybody here is familiar with. Thomas Edison, when he was asked about the 700 times that he had failed trying to produce the incandescent light bulb, says, I have not failed 700 times. I have not failed once. I have found 700 ways that will not work, and when I find all the ways that will not work, I will find the way that does. It's almost cliche at this point, but how much do we believe that? How much, if your staff were to fail 700 times, how hard would it be for us to believe that statement about what they had done? Maybe a more recent example is one, how many of you guys use Post-it notes? All right. Did any of you know that Post-it notes were created due to a failure? A couple of you did. For those of you that knew it was a failure, do you know what they were trying to create?
Very sticky adhesive.
A very sticky adhesive, the stickiest, in fact. And 3M, who owns Post-it, has a policy that when you are looking to create something and you fail, you don't throw it away, you don't cover it up, you don't pretend like it didn't happen, you file it. And I don't mean file it like in the sense of I'm going to file it in the circular filing system. You literally take your research, you take the results, and you put it in a file. And they have an entire team dedicated to looking at those failures and seeing what kind of value can be learned from them. They were looking to create the stickiest glue. Instead, they found glue that sticks just long enough that the note will stay on your monitor until one day before you need it. I don't know how they managed to pull that off. But somehow they know exactly how many days that it needs to stick, and then it lasts one day less than that. I don't know how much of 3M's, done a lot of research. I can't figure out how much of 3M's revenue is made up by Post-it note, but we all know it's not a little bit. And it's all because they had a culture of growth. And they said, we don't have failures. We have growth opportunities. We have learning opportunities. And we're not going to say, how dare you screw up the glue? You wasted all that money. You wasted all that research. You wasted all those resources. Can't believe you. We trusted you. They said, okay, that didn't work. Put that in the file cabinet. You get back to work. We'll have somebody else see if we can find any value from that. The paradox of failure is that if we don't admit it, we never learn from it. Yet, if we succumb to it, we'll get beaten down by it. And so it's this delicate balance of acknowledging it without fearing it and learning from it without losing from it. I'm not saying there's not consequences. I am one standing in front of you that had massive consequences for failure in my life. But I learned so much. And because I was willing to take responsibility, most people that go to prison, they spend the entire time blaming other people for them being there. I spent the entire time saying, I put myself here, nobody else is responsible, and I'm going to make the best of this. And you know what I did? I was able to not only personally grow from it by getting 3 associates, a bachelor's, a master's degree, reading over 800 nonfiction books, learning Spanish, learning how to play guitar, learning anything I get my hands on, but then I also built an entire system called Inmate Peer Programming, which was a rehabilitation program. And by the time I left, we had produced over 27 different courses, and over 10,000 inmates had gone through the courses I created. And they are still using courses that I created in the Arizona Department of Corrections today. Years later. What's that?
They didn't hire you?
They actually asked. I chose not to go back in for that. I wanted to. There's a lot there. I don't mind going back in. Obviously, I'm doing that now. But there's a lot of people. One of the things that I think happens is that when people get out of prison, they default to what's easy. And I knew that. I was there behind bars for over a decade, ladies and gentlemen. 14-year sentence, 12 years behind bars, 2 years under community supervision. That's a lot of time. What I did not want to do is just go back and say, well, I've been doing good things here. I'm going to stay there. Yeah. And I came out and I became the training manager for a company, and then they promoted me to the director of revenue role that I've already told you about. And then I decided to start my own company, and now I get to be an impact to companies all over the U.S. and in some cases internationally, because I get to use all the things that I learned, all that curriculum development, all that leadership development, all that training, and all the things I've done. And now that backstory I get to use to inspire others that says, you know what? Mistakes don't have to define you unless you let them. Keep making mistakes. They're going to define you. That's going to happen. But a mistake doesn't have to. Now, there's one more thing I want to mention before we start wrapping this up. We've talked a lot about kind of you've already failed. And because we've already failed, it's easy to sit there and say, okay, cool, like I can start to think through this and I can start to rewire and okay, I've already failed and now I got to think about how do I learn from this and how do I grow and okay, that's good. But there's one other aspect of this that we have not touched on, and it's what I'm going to call the pre-failure paralysis. Pre-failure paralysis. It's the thing that prevents us from making decisions because we're scared that we might fail. Any of you not done something you knew you should have done because what if? So we're not going to do this in our time together today. This is a resource for you to take home. Can I have somebody to come hand these out to everybody? The first page, thank you so much. The first page that we gave you was called Confession of Failure, and we wrote that on the page. This next worksheet looks very similar, but it's actually called Confession of Fear. And this page that we're going to look at right now basically walks us through the same mental framework in advance of the failure. And it allows us to say, hey, I might fail when I do this. I might fail when I stand in front of people and do a workshop. I might fail when I work to even create the workshop. And if I mess up, I will face, I'm going to look unprofessional. I'm going to maybe lose a client. I'm going to whatever, right? But if I succeed, it's going to be epic because I'm going to gain clients. I'm going to gain respect. I'm going to gain whatever. Either way, I will win because I will learn. I will learn how to present. I will learn better ways of doing things. I will learn how to communicate, whatever it is. And the same thing can be true. I'm using that because she was willing to share it with us. But this is an opportunity. Again, please don't do this here right now. This is for you to take back and think through next time you're afraid of failing. but hopefully this will help the rewire. And again, if you want more of these, let me know. We're happy to provide them. As we wrap up today, can I ask somebody, I know it's probably a little hard to read, but can I ask somebody that can see it to read our quote here on the screen?
Sure. Failure is simple. It's simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently.
Henry Ford said that. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. Thank you so much. Can I have somebody else read a quote by Dale Carnegie, another huge voice in the leadership space? Anybody else? Go ahead.
Develop successes from failures. Discouragement and failure are two of the surest stepping stones to success.
Thank you so much. Develop successes from failure. Discouragement, that's interesting. Discouragement and failure are two of the surest stepping stones to success. I really love this next one by Thomas Watson Sr. If you want to increase your success rate, double your failure rate. And then last one by a guy by the name of Chris Voss. Failure plants the seeds of future success. Ladies and gentlemen, the person who sees failure and sees success in progress is the person who's growing. And I believe they're doing their part to change the world because they're impacting the lives of those around them. Now, something I want to do today is I want to do maybe a little different. Now, sometimes you go to a class and you sit there for an hour and they give you a certificate that says, you completed this class, yay, go you. And then you go and you drop it in the trash can on the way. Or maybe you're one of those people that like your entire cubicle is like papered with all the certificates. You got your LinkedIn ones and you got your mandatory ones, right? Okay, whatever that is, I have certificates for you today. But this certificate is a little bit unique. This certificate is not a certificate of completion. It's not a certificate of participation. It's not a you get 1 credit hour of whatever. This is a certificate of success, and it says this. This certificate is proudly presented to, and I have one for each of you, in recognition of engaging catastrophic failure and debilitating difficulty, in a manner that invaluable lessons were learned and immeasurable development was gained, leading to success at a level previously not thought possible. I'm gonna call you up one at a time, just like we would in graduation, and we're gonna clap for each other, and we're gonna be happy and excited about this, and we're gonna wrap this thing up very quickly. And so I'm gonna call you up, and I'm gonna use my Saturday Night Live voice. So if you thought I was loud before, wait till we get going now. Will you join me in welcoming first and foremost? Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate the time that I've been able to share with you today. If any of you would like to connect with me, that is my LinkedIn. You're welcome to scan that QR code. I also have business cards for anybody that would like one today that will include both my contact information as well as information on how to reach my entire organization. I don't ask for much. If you hated this time together, I genuinely would like to know because I want to make it better. I really do. This is our most popular workshop. And if we can improve it for the next group, I would definitely like to do that. If you liked it, tell Amanda because she's the one that brought it in, and I want her to know that she made the good decision. And if you loved it and you feel like other organizations should benefit from these types of presentations, I would invite you to go ahead and leave us a Google review. That QR code will allow you to prompt in the Google review for SML Consultative. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, it has been an absolute privilege. Thank you so much. Amanda, thank you. Have a great one.